Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between. Welcome to another episode of the Chaps Chat Cats. My name's Jake, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by Sambo and Johnny. How are we, chaps?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Sick
Finally.
of this house and this property, but pretty good.
We're all separately have gone through our own COVID journeys over the last 7 days. On the show, Cats v Giants, the round 11 preview pod. Going to get into that. Obviously, a lot to talk about, not just the fact that the Cats are trying to avoid a fourth straight defeat at home to GWS. They've beaten us the last 3 times down at Kardinia Park. We've also got to talk about one of the best Cats of the 21st century becoming the, holder of the games record for the club, historic Tommy Hawkins. We'll talk a little bit about team selection, though. We're recording this at 5:15 on a Thursday night, so we don't actually have the teams in front of us, but we've got some stuff we can definitely talk about that. We'll chat what we want to see, and then for the extended part of the show, for our Patreon subscribers, we're going to do the Patreon match predictions. If you want that part of the show, make sure you go on over, hit up a free trial on the Hoops Crew Patreon. Start your free trial today. We have to shout out our media network sponsor, Valhalla Brewing, the nectar of the gods. If you're in the CBD, hit up the old tap room. If you're out in North Geelong, hit up the brew hall. Didn't get the chance to last time we were in G-Town, but I'm really wanting to make sure that next time we go down, we plan to have a brewski or two at Valhalla Brewing, and we thank them for their sponsorship of the Hoops Crew Media Network. But let's get into it, chaps. Cats v Giants, round 11. I actually want to start just section out 5 minutes here before we talk about the game, because to me, this is actually bigger than the game. Don't know if that is how everyone else feels about it, but for me, it is. Historic Hawkins becomes a legend. I don't know how people are feeling about this. Hawkey taking the game's record only, not long after it was set by Joel Selwood. But if there's going to be anyone to break it so soon after, you'd have to think it'd be Hawkey, Selwood's best mate. Kicked nearly 800 goals in the hoops. He's kicked currently 791 goals. He's going to hold the game's record at the club on his own at 356 after Saturday afternoon. Chaps, I'll go to you first, Johnny. What are your thoughts on Hawkey, his achievement, career? Yeah.
Pretty incredible, really. When, players reach 300 games, I say that's a huge and amazing milestone to reach, and then to break your club's record so soon after Selwood did, it's still another pretty incredible achievement as well. And he's going to break it by some fair margin, depending how long how many more games he plays this year and he goes on next year. It's fantastic. Hopefully, he kicks 9 goals this week. That'll be great to reach the 800 on the day. That would be. If that happens, that will be an incredible sight to see, and just see the Kardinia Park go absolutely ballistic.
There goes
That would be
hero.
Glorious. Amazing
Touch the
achievement. Taking it off best mate, I'm sure Selwood won't be minded at all. Like, I don't think he was ever in it for the personal accolades, and I don't think Hawkins is either. It's just about having fun, playing a game with your mates, and making sure the Cats are in a good position. And I think the Cats are in a good position at the moment, and it's not going our way at the moment. But tell you what, once Hawkins leaves, it's going to be in a good spot. We've got young guys coming up who look pretty good, in pretty good form. But yeah, I think it's just an incredible achievement. 3 premierships with the Cats. All-Australian captain, Coleman medalist, All-Australian player a few times, leading Cats goal kicker in 11 years straight. So he's done it all.
Insane like that, yeah.
something insane. He's done it all.
Yeah.
Not much more he can achieve, except hopefully one more premiership. But I tell you what, he's done everything that you'd want your big four to do.
Absolutely. Sambo, any thoughts to add there on Hawkey's career? Any thoughts about him coming into the actual game itself this weekend?
I mean, lots of thoughts. John's summed it up all pretty well, so I'll try not to take up too much time. Obviously, he's a special player for the Cats. He's a special player for AFL and the game in general in terms of what he's achieved and also his longevity. I think he's been, he's probably not really talked about enough in terms of how well he's been able to manage his sort of longevity and play at such a high level for such a long time. But also, he's a special player to us personally. He's one of those players where he's kind of, he's been there for the biggest breadth of of our journey with the Cats, since we were sort of old enough to really soak it in and pay attention. And just this year in general, I think, specifically this year and heading into this game, I think it's a good reminder. Last week was a really good reminder, as we discussed in the recap, of how important he is to the squad, even when he's not firing on all cylinders. Because when you take him out, there's a whole lot of attention that the teams can spread onto the other players. And I think also the fact that Ollie Henry has been our most targeted player inside 50 also shows you that the Cats aren't necessarily expecting Hawkins to operate at the level that maybe the media is expecting Hawkins to operate at. Not that Hawkins can't play the way he used to, but the way he's tagged and the way that teams are, focusing on him, I think it's it's very smart of the Cats to not necessarily target Hawkins as much as they may have once. And use him in that sort of negating role where he takes so much focus and so much emphasis away from the defense that there's other players that can be targeted more readily, like Ollie Henry. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him hit up a lot more on the weekend. Being not to the hopefully not to the I don't expect it to be to the detriment of the outcome, but I would expect a lot of players, as is often the case in these sorts of milestones, would expect a lot of players to be sort of keeping their eyes on Hawkins and trying to bring him into the game the way he brings other players into the game.
Yeah, and as you're just talking about longevity, like positionally, how often do you see players of his size and strength? Like there would have been a lot of talk, I imagine, at one point or another of like, oh, once a few defenders get a bit bigger, once he won't be able to rely on his strength. It's so funny. I was just going back the other morning and I watched the things you do when you're in COVID isolation. I was watching 2009 Collingwood Cats prelim final. So this was the game before the Saints grand final we played in. And everyone talks about, some of his stuff in the grand final in 2009. Obviously, everyone talks about 2011, his grand final performance there in the third quarter, I think it was. But my goodness, 2009, his first half of that prelim final, some of the setup work he was doing, and that's only 3 seasons into his career. I guess I'd sort of forgotten a bit how he was doing all that stuff, that team first stuff, really early on. Like he set Chapman up with a beautiful, just the ball. I can't remember if it bounced up and he was in sort of a contest and he just tapped it out to Hawkins to run onto. He's been a clever team first player the whole way through. And I think that is what, all the goals aside, I think that's what has meant he can play 356 games and break the record, is that it's so much more than what he does on the scoreboard. It's the fact that he gives other players a chance to score. Yeah, I'm going to be very sad when Hawkey decides to hang it up. But let's enjoy it for as long as we get to moving forward, see how far he can push this game's record. Chaps, from that, let's quickly talk about this. The Cats. I think it is a little. It's starting to get the. It's growing a bit of legs here as a bit of a home game curse against the Giants. There's not many teams that have beaten Geelong down at Gadinia Park 3 times during this era of success, let alone 3 times consecutively. What do you think for you, Sambo? I'll go to you first here, and then Johnny follow on. What is it to you that has made GWS such a tricky team for the Cats to play? Is there something you can put your finger on, or is it just an esoteric, undefinable thing?
That's assuming a large degree of knowledge about a team that isn't the Cats that I I don't have.
Well, just from the games you've watched, like what stands out to you? Why do they
Well,
beat
I
us all
think
the
I
time?
think, and
Yeah.
this is, again, people that know more than me are welcome to correct me in the comments. From my eyeballing it, of not necessarily just the Cats games, but from games I've seen, of them play elsewhere. GWS, they are a pretty kind of like corridor first kind of team from the way I would view it. And not to make it all about the width of the ground, but it is a narrow ground, and I think they do probably play it pretty well because they've got so much dare through the middle, and I think that's why their GWS sometimes can be a bit of a what's the word? Like a bit of a seesawing team, because I think they've got so much dare and they take so many risks with their movement straight up the middle, straight or even when they're going wide. And they're so efficient with it. But when their efficiency drops, like they get hurt so much because they do take things on so heavily. And that's about the extent of what I've seen of them specifically this year. Something that I think is why they have lost some of those games is when they're, when they're it's in their head, like against the Bulldogs. Um, that kind of it sort of felt like it got in their heads, like that they were sort of second guessing themselves and they weren't able to really get momentum on because their risks weren't paying off. And once a risk doesn't pay off, it can sort of compound and just keep getting worse and worse because suddenly your confidence is down and you're second guessing it. So I guess like I said, if I'm just thinking about it, esoteric things or trying to draw conclusions, I guess that would translate well when they're flying to playing at Gadinia Park. But I'm sure there's some intangible qualities as well. It might be the you know I don't know. It might be so different from their home, or it might that they actually come around the arc and like it, or maybe it's so similar to their home ground that it translates really well. But certainly, yeah, their sort of dash and dare through the middle, I think, translates really well.
They're 5, 4, and 1 in their last 10 games against the Giants, the Cats, Johnny. Which there wouldn't be too many teams that we've only won 5 of our last 10 against in the whole competition. Is there anything that stands out to you? How do you feel playing against the Giants? Like,
Oh,
is it just any other team, or do you think there's something actually going on in this matchup that they've got a bit of the edge over us at the minute?
I'll say there's definitely something going on with the Giants at the moment. The way they're just able to, I don't know. Yeah, it's a strange one because just able to play us fairly well, but also the last, and they always seem to come up against us sort of when they need a big win or a big time performance. They always seem to be able to pull it out against the Cats, especially at our home ground. So I think one, they enjoy playing at Cardinia Park, and I think they enjoy playing against the Cats because Cats for a long time have been one of the top teams. So of course, teams who are around us, similar position to us or upcoming, or you always want to play your best. You play the best, and that's what I think they're able to do really well is play the best against us and also take away our strengths. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this weekend because, as I said, the Giants, their last few weeks haven't been the best. They've definitely dropped off. Toby Green hasn't been playing his best, and I think Toby Green's a big part of it as well. He knows how to play against the Cats fairly well and he always performs. So I don't know. It's a tough one, but I do think there is something there that do have something over us at the moment. But yeah, I'm not sure about this weekend. It feels really weird. It feels a very 50-50 game. I think
Let's
whoever gets on top early could really dominate.
Mm.
But I think with the Cats, Milestone or Hawkins, home ground, getting a bit of a rest for some players. Cameron's back. Stanley most likely will be back. I think getting some of that experience should help us a lot. And hopefully they can isolate Hawkins away from Giants and not let him get double teamed like he has been previously.
I think
If we,
it's really
there you go.
interesting because just just in terms of like the 50-50 nature of it. Like 6 weeks ago, this was earmarked as being like you know the game of this round, or like just really
Yeah.
important or really really good because they were two premiership
Mm.
favorites. And now things have changed a lot, but it's still probably the game of the round and really important because
Mm.
because our fortunes have shifted in almost identical ways. So
Yeah.
it's not ideal as a supporter of either club because it feels really important, but it could be quite ideal as a neutral because we thought this game was going to be
Yeah.
like top of the table clash. You know, two red hot teams possibly coming in undefeated, and instead it's like, you know, teams that started red hot were going absolutely well and are now on a losing streak and, you know, sort of desperate to put a plug in it. Um, and like, and it like is this just the 50-50 nature of it just really intrigues me because we've gone through the same kind of process. Um, both teams have had some pretty big injuries, some pretty poor results, and then like you do go, well, it's a Geelong's home game, but then you go, but GWS play really well at Geelong's home game. Like it's just everything
Yeah.
you kind of like want to stack towards one team. There's kind of an answer for the other one. So I think it really does feel oddly 50-50.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre matchup when you look at the form of both these teams, like the Cats and GWS combined record in the last 5 weeks. So they've each obviously, so it's 10 games total. We're looking at are 3-7. The Giants are 1-4 in their last 5 games. We're 2-3. So you go from being two of the absolute hottest starting teams this season. And look, I don't think it's all bad, to be honest, from where I'm sitting as a Cats fan. I know there's been some
No,
disappointing results in there. However, I will say this: if we lose a fourth one, like, your chances of making top 4 start to narrow. If you lose a fourth one here for both of these teams,
Mm.
this is it's not absolute must win, but it's like you should win unless you want to try and avoid losing like
It's
3 times more this season. You can probably only
it feels
lose
like
6 games this year if you want to make top 4.
it feels like one of those games that, yeah, in terms of like the whole season and structure of the ladder, how it is, doesn't feel like it's a important game for the context of the season. But for both teams,
Mm.
it feels like it's a big game, one game that both want to win. They both want to get rid of that losing streak. Because, yeah, this losing streak started at exactly the same time in terms of the last 3 weeks. Very similar, well, not really similar margins, but similar, I feel like similar ways both teams have lost. Just not, I can't really say for the Giants, but I watched the Dogs game against the Giants and they just looked very out of it. Just looked very lethargic, didn't really seem engaged in the whole contest, and sort of felt like the same for the Cats. Like they've started off not looking engaged, not being there, and then getting themselves back into it, and then just falling short. Apart from the Gold Coast game, where Gold Coast just blew us out of the water. Really, pretty convinced. Well, not really convincingly. We still scored 100 points, which is insane. It's like
I think a lot of that. I'll be honest, like about that game. Like I took some nice things out of it. I didn't think we were as bad as everyone was
yeah,
saying in terms of we're really bad in a couple of key areas. But it was sort of weird to me. It wasn't the areas that got pointed out, like
yeah,
Geelong's stoppage where it kind of got criticised. And I was like, well, actually, if you look at it, we won the stoppages in 2 of the 4 quarters. And it wasn't only in the last quarter. I thought some of the scoring in the last quarter was a bit junk timey.
yeah,
Like if another team did it, That's what I would have said about them. I would have said,
Mm.
well, they piled on 45 points, once the game was absolutely dead. But just to talk about the games, chaps, like, how many losses can you afford and still finish top 4? I've just scrolled all the way back every season back to 2014. The highest loss total to make the top 4 since 2014 that I can see is 7 losses. So that's the absolute bottom. So if we lose this week, that means you can afford 3 for the rest of the year, and they're the outlier. Most of the time you have to be like 6 losses or fewer to be getting in there.
Yeah.
6 losses, you'd be absolutely gutted to miss the 4. But 7 is you'd probably feel like, oh, we just squeaked in to that top 4. So it's a big game in that sense. Let's talk some team selection, Johnny, because you mentioned something, and I'll handball to you here first. We don't have team selection news out, but we do have the health update from a couple of days ago. And the news there is that Sam De Koning is a test with his hamstring. Jeremy Cameron, concussion to be confirmed. So we don't know 100% yet whether
Yeah,
Cameron
because it was a
will
short
be
break
back.
too, wasn't it? After his concussion, because I thought I was like, oh, well, it's a 2-week, but like, yeah, it's technically not necessarily been a full 2 weeks. Because did we go from
So when did
the Port
it
game on
happen?
Friday night? No,
Friday
it was
night,
last
so 10th of May.
Friday
So
last
it's
week.
got to be 12 days
Mm.
in isolation.
So
not isolation, sorry. Without 12 days break.
Yeah.
So
and in the report, it says now, although on the list it says Jeremy Cameron concussion TBC, in the actual quotes, I'm trying to see who this is from the Cats. Anyway, whoever it
it's
is.
been over
Oh,
12
Brett
days
Johnson.
anyway.
Brett Johnson says, in the thing, it says Jeremy Cameron is also a test as he continues to work through concussion protocols following round 9. And Brett Johnson says he's ticking all the boxes, getting really well looked after by our medical team. At this stage, it's on track, but there's still a bit to play out in terms of the protocols for the rest of the week. We're hopeful that Jezza gets out there. That makes a massive difference.
Yeah. Especially to my bloody Patreon match predictions.
Well, as far as I'm aware, they've got the can't play game for 12 days. It's been 12 days since his concussion, and he's also got to pass all the tests. So it's just a matter of, does he pass his last concussion test? It sounds very similar to what a lot of other clubs would be saying as well.
The
Going,
wording
he's
is
progressing
interesting
well,
though.
blah blah blah. I find it just pretty
Sam's
stock standard.
The thing that I don't
I'm
think
still a little bit worried.
the one word is hopeful to me. Normally, I think they would say we've still got some things to tick off, but we're confident. That to me is the generic wording to say, to kind of like let everyone know, because confident doesn't mean it's no guarantee, but it's like it's a way to make the fans go, oh, cool, and like good. There's some things to tick off, but they're confident. Hopeful to me sounds a little bit more like we might be really up against the clock here to get to get those last things, and there is a definite chance. It just like you say, the wording seems very stock standard and generic, but I feel like normally that last word they would use is, but we're confident Jeremy can pass the test, blah blah. To say we're hopeful sounds a little bit little more unsure.
I reckon he must fail his last test.
Yeah.
And they're just like, hopefully he passes the next one.
Yeah.
Or the other thing too is, like there's a number. I have to say, I know nothing about what testing is done and that sort of thing. Like, who knows? There could be a number of hoops that you've got to jump through, to get right. Like, it may not be a matter of like failing. You could be pass, but that last whatever it is. And if anyone does know what the actual protocol is, I'd love to know.
I'm looking it up.
Or point me in the direction of an article. But like whatever that last thing is, it'll be interesting to know.
Yeah, what a sorry.
Just vamp it.
That's right. Just while you do, I was gonna say, just while you read that, Sambo, how do you want to talk about De Koning here too? Because or is Jezza the news? Like, what would you prefer to chat, like De Koning was, a test with a hamstring injury. Like, obviously, his absence would impact us in a fairly major way.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to be missing both. But
Yeah.
yeah, like his is De Koning's is pretty massive. But I think there's as long as we'll surely have, I mean, Hawkins is back. Hawkins is back in. So that's
Mm.
if De Koning's not back, then I'll be very glad if we can have Duncan back. I think obviously
Mm.
not like for like defenders, but
Sure.
just Sam's been, he's been in the system. He's he's really getting a hang of how that all works, and he's a really good defender,
Mm.
obviously, but he's a bit more raw talent, a bit younger. Obviously his height is a great advantage. Um, and without him in there, but Duncan in there, I think we were really lacking, especially the way they were taking Stewart out of the game, and presumably GWS are going to do
Mm.
the same thing. I think that experience and that organization that Duncan can bring with it, it won't worry me so much to be missing Sam De Koning if we do have Duncan in there to help sort of rally the troops down back and keep them in shape. If we have Duncan and
Mm.
Sam De Koning, great. Um, but we've got Hawkins up forward, so Cameron being out and missing again would suck mostly from the whole giving him an opportunity against the Giants. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I just De Koning out would be massive, but I'm pretty happy as long as it's not both Duncan and De Koning out.
I found the protocol
Hmm.
for return to
What's the
play.
protocol, John?
So there's 4 steps. So there's a brief period of relative rest, 24 to 48 hours.
Mhm.
So that's just, the players just rest, don't do any training, reduce screen time. That can take some basic painkillers.
Mm.
Players should progress to the recovery stage after a maximum of 48 hours, or even if they have symptoms from the concussion. So recovery is basically physical activities. Um, it just sounds like it's slowly working back to like full-time training, work, whatever. On the
Mm.
stage 2, stage 3 is a graded loaded program with monitoring. Um, so to get to stage 3, all concussions related symptoms and signs have fully resolved for
Mm.
at least 24 hours. And
Mhm.
then stage 4 is basically return to play stuff. So basically, they've got to go through stage 1, 2, and as soon as to get to stage 3 is they've got to have no concussion symptoms.
Li-
Um,
Mm.
and it's just got to be monitored throughout stage 3 to make sure no symptoms reoccur. And then back to onto stage 4, which is basically back to full training and being able to play games.
Mm. It'll be really interesting, like, because like with anything, I suppose any injury, but particularly concussion, you can imagine it can be a fairly like fluid situation that you might feel, you know, better one day, then you have some I mean, like, look at the Liberatore situation where he has
Yeah.
one, comes back, and he has another one. I think he's all right, and it's. I hope he gets out there. I also hope that I feel like you're seeing more and more sometimes too with players coming back. Like, I don't know. People we've talked about with Stewie since he's come back. Like he hasn't been the same yet, but we've also talked about these, been fairly heavily tagged as well. So I guess it's hard to separate one from the other. But anyway, point being, would love for Jezza to be out there. Do you think? Would you like to see Jai Clark play in this game? Or
Yes.
did you like him used as the sub? Okay, so you would like to see him in. Who would you leave out? Okay, this is the question, I guess, is there's been a lot of talk online. Cam Guthrie, not in the greatest of form. He was subbed out, looked pretty frustrated. Hasn't necessarily had the best 2 weeks. Would either of you guys be in favor of resting Cam Guthrie this week with the idea that you bring him back in, or do you think you just back him, Clark's the sub, and you
It's
roll on that way?
it's a tough one because, yeah, Cam Guthrie
He's your
hasn't
favorite
hasn't been
player.
playing his best, He's my favourite player. I wouldn't be aghast or unfazed or hurt in any way if he was rested this week. 'Cause, he does definitely look really frustrated. Gold Coast game, gets subbed off, obviously. I think Jai Clark also been tearing up in the VFL pretty well. As you said, is in that Dempsey stage of his career where he's nearly just not quite there at AFL level just yet. He's still finding his feet, but he's far too good for VFL level. So I think we give Jai Clark a go. Give him a full game, see how he goes in that midfield. It's a big test, but I think you know we need to start giving these young guys a bit more opportunity, not that they already are. Um, yeah, I I would side on the side of Jai Clark. I reckon. Give him another game at home,
Yeah.
full game, 4 minutes against a fairly good Giants midfield. He brings a lot of pressure. He brings that like Atkins, Parfitt's type of pressure, but he's also starting to kick goals, and you can see that confidence slowly building up each game. He gets the ball and starting to use it a lot more smarter. You can see that the Selwood-like comparison is slowly starting to creep in. Also, it doesn't help that there's another guy for West Coast that it's just making everyone look pretty foolish.
Yeah, they're not going to pick him, John.
No.
Clark, for anyone who didn't watch the VFL, shredded the VFL the day after or 2 days after, whatever it was, playing half a game up in Darwin. He played actually in all 4 quarters, had the best part of 30 touches. I think it was 27 or 28, bunch of clearances, kicked 2 goals, both from set shots, one from well outside 50. And yeah, really was looking like he was taking the piss. Just really cracking in, winning the ball, clearly feeling confident. As you said, Johnny, sort of that 2023 Ollie Dempsey phase. He's not quite cracked the nut at AFL level, but I think he's only a season away. I think 2025 we'll be talking about him a lot for the AFL side. Let's get to what we want to see and get out of here. We're bloating out here, the show. Sambo, go to you first. What is one thing you want to see Saturday against the Giants?
Jeremy Cameron. I mean, yeah, I will go with that one. Like, I'd love. There's other ones that I've said before, that defensive structure, all that kind of stuff, but I don't want to repeat myself. So I would say I do really want to see Jeremy Cameron out there. You know, against the against the old crew. I think, yeah, he's a bit like Geelong. He started the season so on fire and so red hot, and he was the best player in the competition according to half the media, and he was going to win the Coleman and the Brownlow and all this stuff. And a bit like the Cats, he's just had a bit of unfavorable form over the last few weeks. So I'd really like to see him and the Cats come back and have sort of a resurgence of equal measure. There's nothing quite like watching Jeremy Cameron when he's in the zone, and my heart could really use that this week. So let's go with that as the thing I want to see.
Johnny, what about you?
Obviously, I want to see Jeremy Cameron. Want to see a win. I want to see Tommy Stewart get back to his usual best and absolutely tear a new area for the Giants and just shake off the tag. If he most likely we'll get one. They seem to be tagging him now, and hopefully he can not give away too many Tom Stewart like free kicks or get frustrated, but just focus on his game and really, really tear Giants up.
I like it. So annoying doing these preview pods. I'm always like, I can't wait to watch the footy tonight. And then I'm like, the Cats aren't playing until Saturday. Really sucks. I am going to go with, I want to see clean, basic footy skills from the start. And this isn't only a note from the Gold Coast game. We were there at the Port game, and early on, Geelong got hit really hard on the counter attack. Basically, moving inside forward 50, a mark isn't taken, a ground ball isn't collected cleanly, a stoppage can't be formed, and it sweeps back the other way and we get scored against. And it's basically, you could even narrow that down to basic footy skills inside the front half. I think that's really hurt us the last 2 weeks. And I wouldn't even level that at any one particular player. I think it's been definitely shared around. So I think that's what I would like to see. Just come out, move the footy more cleanly, more efficiently in the front half of the ground. And I honestly think if we do that, it'll all come flowing back pretty quickly. I don't think our stoppage work's been terrible. I don't think our pressuring and tackling work's been terrible. I don't think our backline's actually been that bad. But an inability to get the game going on the outside once we actually have won the footy, that's been problematic. Teams have definitely shut down our ball movement. And when they haven't, we've absolutely shot ourselves in the foot with shutting it down ourselves. So, that's what I would like to see. Really clean ball movement. Again, some early marks for Ollie Henry, Jessica Cameron, etc. That'd be grand. All right, that is it.
Beautiful.
We're going to move on now to our Patreon match predictions. And what I said earlier, if you want to get that part of the show, you can start your free trial today on the Hoops Crew Patreon website. Get extended versions of our podcast shows, both the previews and recaps. You get Wednesday news wraps. You get early access to interview episodes of Behind the Play with Paul, and you also get exclusive VFL men's and women's coverage on the channel. So go and start your free trial there. Thank you very much, chaps, for chatting the Cats with me. And until next time, go Cats.
Go Cats.
Go Cats.